The gates opened at 11:47 p.m. Not the way gates usually open in neighborhoods like Victoria Garden City, slow, deliberate, controlled by someone inside who has decided to grant you access. These gates opened with purpose. With finality. A young man stood in the circular driveway, his designer sneakers planted on imported stone, his face caught somewhere between disbelief and rage. The kind of rage that comes when the world stops working the way you've always known it to work. Behind him, 2 security guards waited. Not with aggression. Not with satisfaction. Just with the quiet certainty of men following orders they knew better than to question. You can't do this. His voice cracked. I live here. The older guard, Emeka, who had worked this property for 8 years, shook his head slowly. Not tonight, Oga Chinedu. Your father's instructions were clear. My father. The young man laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you have any idea what my father can do to you? What one phone call from him could? Yes, sir. Emeka's voice remained level. That's exactly why I'm following his orders. The gates began their slow mechanical slide closed. And Chinedu Okonkwo, 23 years old, heir to a business empire worth billions of naira, a name that opened doors across Lagos, stood on the wrong side of those gates for the first time in his life. He had everything. Wealth most people couldn't imagine. Protection that had shielded him from every consequence. A family name that made problems disappear before they fully materialized. People had excused his behavior for years because of who his parents were. Until one night. One decision. One video that spread across the internet faster than his father's lawyers could contain it. Stay with me. Because this story isn't about punishment. It's about what happens when comfort disappears and pride has nowhere left to hide. Before we go further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Every city has families like the Okonkwos. You see them in the VIP sections at concerts and award shows. On the dedication plaques of hospitals and universities. In the business pages, sitting on panels about wealth creation and economic development. At exclusive events where a single ticket costs more than most people's monthly salary. They are the architecture of power. The people who shape cities not through public office but through private influence, through investments, through the kind of authority that doesn't need to announce itself because everyone already knows it's there. Chief Adebayo Okonkwo built his empire through vision and calculated risk. Import-export in the 90s when Nigeria's economy was restructuring. Real estate development when Lagos was expanding. Technology investments before anyone else saw their potential. By the time others recognized the opportunities, Adebayo already owned substantial positions. He was respected. Not universally loved. Respect and affection are different currencies in the world of high-stakes business, but deeply respected. When Chief Okonkwo spoke at industry conferences, people took notes. When he backed a venture, investors followed. When he gave his word, it held weight that contracts sometimes didn't. His reputation rested on 3 pillars: business acumen, personal integrity, and family values. At least, that's what Forbes Africa said. Ngozi Okonkwo was everything a man in Adebayo's position needed in a partner. London School of Economics educated. Eloquent in 3 languages. Beautiful in the timeless way that suggested good genetics and disciplined self-care. She chaired charity organizations. She hosted fundraising galas. She gave speeches about raising successful children in the modern age. The media loved her. This Day Style featured her in profiles about influential women. She smiled in those photographs with the kind of composure that suggested life had arranged itself according to her plans through nothing more than wisdom and determination. What those magazines didn't capture were the nights she lay awake, staring at the ceiling of their master bedroom, wondering where everything had gone wrong. And then there was Chinedu. Their only son. Born after 2 miscarriages and years of prayer. The miracle child. The heir to everything Adebayo had built. 23 years old. Handsome in that effortless way that comes from good genetics and expensive grooming. University educated, though his degree from a private university in Ghana had more to do with his family's donations than his academic performance. Employed at Okonkwo Holdings as an executive director in a position that had been created specifically for him. Chinedu was supposed to be the culmination of everything his parents had worked for. Instead, he had become their greatest source of private anguish. The community that surrounded the Okonkwos, their neighbors in VGC, their peers in the business world, their friends at the Ikoyi Club, had watched Chinedu grow up. They had witnessed the transformation from promising child to troubled teenager to dangerous adult. They had seen the incidents, heard the stories, noticed the pattern, and they had remained silent. Because in circles like these, loyalty to your peers outweighed concern for their children's behavior. Because exposing someone else's family problems meant inviting scrutiny of your own. Because as long as the consequences stayed private, everyone could maintain the appearance that everything was fine. But appearances crack. How did a child with every advantage become a public embarrassment? Why did his parents finally stop protecting him? What happened that night that crossed a line even wealth couldn't erase? And why did the people who used to fear Chinedu suddenly stop answering his calls? The answers were coming. But first, you need to understand how Chinedu Okonkwo became the kind of person everyone feared but nobody respected. Chinedu's story began with love. Not the complicated kind that requires sacrifice or sets healthy boundaries. The overwhelming, unconditional kind that gives everything and asks nothing in return. He was born during the best year of his father's career. Okonkwo Holdings had just closed a deal that would quadruple the company's valuation. Money, which Adebayo had spent years carefully managing, suddenly became abundant. And Chinedu, their miracle baby after years of trying, after heartbreak and medical consultations, became the living symbol of that abundance. "He's our answered prayer," Ngozi would say, holding him with the fierce protectiveness of someone who had fought too hard for this gift to ever risk losing it. "He'll have everything we didn't," Adebayo declared. And he meant it. Chinedu did have everything. The best private schools in Lagos, Corona, Grange, institutions where his father's donations ensured he was always welcome regardless of performance. The best tutors when his grades slipped. The best gadgets, upgraded every few months whether he needed them or not. The best birthday parties at the finest venues. The best family vacations to London, Dubai, and New York. The best of everything that money could buy and influence could secure. But somewhere in the space between giving him everything and teaching him why it mattered, something essential was lost. Accountability. By age 8, Chinedu had learned that tears could reverse punishments. By age 12, he understood that his father's name could make problems disappear. By age 16, he knew that consequences were suggestions, not requirements. The first major incident happened during his SS2 year at one of Lagos's elite secondary schools. A teacher, Mr. Adeyemi, a 15-year veteran who believed education should be earned rather than purchased, caught Chinedu cheating on a terminal exam. The evidence was undeniable. Identical answers to another student's test, including the same specific errors that made coincidence impossible. Mr. Adeyemi called Chinedu to his office after class. "This is unacceptable," he said, placing both exam papers on the desk. "I'm giving you a 0 and reporting this to the principal." Chinedu looked at him with a blank expression of someone hearing words that didn't seem to register as relevant. "You should reconsider that decision, sir." "Excuse me. My father donated 20 million naira to the new science laboratory. He's on the board of governors. I don't think you want to make this a bigger issue than it needs to be." Mr. Adeyemi felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear exactly, but recognition. This wasn't a student making a mistake and learning from it. This was a student weaponizing privilege. Young man, your father's donations don't change what you did. Academic integrity isn't negotiable. We'll see about that, Chinida replied and walked out. 2 days later, Mr. Adeyemi was called to the principal's office. The principal, a competent administrator who had learned to navigate the politics of elite education, sat behind his desk with the expression of someone delivering news he didn't agree with but couldn't change. The matter with Chinedu Okonkwo has been resolved, he said carefully. Resolved how? Mr. Adeyemi asked, though he already knew. Chief Okonkwo has requested that we give the boy another opportunity. A retest. Under supervised conditions, of course. He cheated. That's not about second chances. I understand your position, the principal interrupted gently. But Chief Okonkwo is, well, you understand. The school depends on support from families like his. I'm asking you to be flexible on this matter. Mr. Adeyemi wanted to fight. He wanted to stand on principle, to insist that right was right regardless of who the student's father was. But he also wanted to keep his job. He had a family, a mortgage, school fees of his own to pay. Chinedu took the retest. He passed, barely. The incident was filed away and forgotten. And Chinedu learned a valuable lesson. Rules were for other people. The pattern repeated throughout his teenage years with increasing frequency and severity. A fight with another student that resulted in a broken nose, resolved with the other family accepting a generous settlement to cover medical costs and ensure silence. A car accident where Chinedu was clearly at fault and possibly intoxicated, resolved with the police report mysteriously disappearing and the other driver suddenly deciding not to press charges after receiving an envelope of cash. Disrespectful behavior toward teachers, staff, and service workers, met with stern talks from his father that changed nothing because Chinedu knew they would be followed by continued funding and access to everything he wanted. The community noticed. At weddings and society parties, the adults would exchange knowing glances when Chinedu's name came up. That Okonkwo boy is becoming a problem, they would whisper over champagne and small chops. Someone should talk to his parents. Someone should, but no one will. Chief Okonkwo is too powerful, too connected. And so the whispers remained whispers, and Chinedu continued on his trajectory, accumulating incidents the way some people collect achievements. Ngozi saw it all. She lay awake at night, listening to her husband's steady breathing, wondering where they had gone wrong. She remembered the sweet child Chinedu had been, curious, affectionate, full of potential. She grieved for that child while watching what he had become. She tried to talk to her husband about it. We need to set boundaries, she said one evening after Chinedu had come home at 4 a.m., reeking of alcohol and expensive perfume, and had been rude to the security guard who tried to greet him. He's young, Adebayo replied, not looking up from his newspaper. Young men make mistakes. This is more than mistakes, and you know it. He's rude. He's entitled. He treats people like they're beneath him. He has confidence. In this world, that's an asset. Confidence and arrogance are not the same thing. Adebayo finally looked at her, and she saw in his eyes the same fear she felt. But where her fear made her want to act, his made him defensive. What do you want me to do, Ngozi? Throw him out. Disown him. He's our son. Our only child. Everything I've built is for him. But what are we building in him? She asked quietly. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Because answering it would require admitting that somewhere along the way, in their desire to give Chinedu everything, they had failed to give him the one thing that truly mattered, character. The small incidents continued. The excuses multiplied. The fear in Chinedu's eyes that might have once responded to correction was replaced by a cold certainty that he was untouchable. And in VGC, in the clubs Chinedu frequented, in the circles where his father's name still carried weight, People began to step aside when he entered a room. Not out of respect, but out of a survival instinct that recognized danger. They feared him. They accommodated him. They enabled him. But they did not respect him. And respect, unlike fear, cannot be purchased or inherited. It can only be earned. Chinedu was about to learn this lesson in the most public, most humiliating way possible. Because one night, his actions would cross a line that could no longer be covered up, paid away, or explained away. And the protection he had relied on his entire life would finally, catastrophically, fail. The night that changed everything started like dozens of nights before it. Chinedu was at Quillox, one of Lagos's premium nightclubs where the cover charge alone ensured a certain class of clientele. He arrived with his usual entourage, 3 friends whose names changed but whose function remained constant. They laughed at his jokes, agreed with his opinions, and never questioned his behavior. He was dressed in designer everything: Balenciaga sneakers, an off-white shirt, a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than most Nigerians earned in 5 years. He moved through the club with the proprietary air of someone who believed the space existed for his entertainment. The VIP section was already reserved under his name. Bottles of Hennessy and Moët were already being chilled. The night was proceeding exactly as Chinedu expected it to. Until he noticed her. She was sitting 3 tables away with a group of friends, celebrating someone's birthday. She was beautiful, not in the obvious high-maintenance way of the women who usually competed for Chinedu's attention, but in a natural, confident way that suggested she didn't need validation from anyone. Her name was Amara. She was 25, a senior consultant at Deloitte, and completely unimpressed by the VIP section theatrics happening around her. Chinedu watched her for 20 minutes, waiting for her to notice him. Waiting for the usual pattern, the glances, the whispers among her friends, the eventual approach or the signals of interest. None came. She laughed with her friends, danced, enjoyed her evening, and didn't look in his direction once. This bothered Chinedu more than it should have. In his world, women noticed him. They competed for his attention. His wealth, his looks, his family name, these were assets that had always guaranteed interest. He sent a bottle of champagne to her table. She accepted it with a polite nod to the waiter and returned to her conversation. He sent another, more expensive this time. She didn't even acknowledge it. His friends noticed his attention wandering. "Guy, you want me to call her over?" one of them offered. "No," Chinedu said, standing. "I'll handle it myself." He walked to her table, champagne glass in hand, smile practiced and confident. "Good evening, ladies," he said, his voice smooth. "I hope you're enjoying the champagne." Amara looked up, her expression polite but guarded. "It's very generous of you, thank you. I'm Chinedu. Chinedu Okonkwo." He said his name the way people do when they expect recognition. When they expect the name alone to open doors. "Nice to meet you," Amara replied, her tone suggesting the conversation was complete. "I'd love to buy you a drink. Personally. My table is just over there. I appreciate the offer, but I'm celebrating with my friends tonight." "I insist," Chinedu said, his smile tightening slightly. "Come on, just one drink. Don't be like that." "I said no thank you," Amara repeated, more firmly this time. Chinedu felt something unfamiliar rising in his chest. Rejection. Actual, unambiguous rejection. "Do you know who my father is?" The words came out before he could stop them. Amara's expression changed from polite to incredulous. "I don't care who your father is. I'm not interested." Her friends had gone quiet, sensing the shift in tone. "You're being rude," Chinedu said, his voice hardening. "And you're not taking no for an answer," Amara replied, standing to match his energy. "I've politely declined multiple times. Please respect that and leave us alone." In any other circumstance, this would have been the moment Chinedu backed down. Or walked away. or at least had the awareness to recognize he was making a scene. But Chinidu had never developed those instincts. He had never needed to. In his world, he didn't face rejection. He issued it. "Listen," he said, his voice rising loud enough that nearby tables turned to look. "I'm trying to be nice here. I sent you expensive champagne. I came over here personally. The least you could do is show some appreciation." Appreciation. Amara's voice was cold now. "You want me to be grateful that you spent money? That's not how respect works. You don't know who you're talking to." "I don't care who I'm talking to," Amara interrupted. "You're acting like a child who can't handle hearing no. That's embarrassing for you, not for me." The surrounding tables had gone completely quiet now. Phones were out. People were watching. Chinidu's face flushed with humiliation and rage. "You're embarrassing yourself. Do you know how many women would?" "Then go talk to them," Amara said flatly. "I'm not interested in you, your money, or your inflated ego. Now please leave before security has to remove you." That last line, the suggestion that he might need to be removed, triggered something in Chinidu. He reached out and grabbed Amara's wrist. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to assert control. Hard enough to make a point. "Don't walk away from me when I'm talking to you," he said, his voice low and threatening. Everything happened very quickly after that. Amara yanked her wrist back. "Get your hands off me." Her male friend stood up. "Yo, what's your problem?" Chinidu shoved him. Not a punch, but an aggressive push that sent the man stumbling backward into a chair. Club security was already moving. But not before at least 15 phones had captured the entire exchange on video. Not before someone had started a Facebook live stream that was already being shared. Not before Chinidu, in his rage and humiliation, said the words that would define him for the next year. "Do you know who I am? My father is Chief Adebayo Okonkwo. I can buy this entire club. I can have all of you arrested. You're all nothing." Security reached him then, professional, firm, not rough but not gentle either. "Sir, you need to leave. Now. Get your hands off me. Do you know how much money I spend here? I'll have your jobs." They escorted him out anyway, past the staring crowd, past the phones recording every second, past the VIP section where his friends sat frozen, unsure whether to follow or pretend they didn't know him. Outside, in the parking lot, Chinidu was still raging. "This is ridiculous. That girl disrespected me. She—" "Sir, please go home," the security supervisor said. "You're no longer welcome here tonight." "I'll have my father." "Sir, go home." Chinidu got into his Range Rover, slammed the door, and drove off into the Lagos night, his phone already ringing with calls he wouldn't answer. Behind him, inside the club, the damage was already done. The videos were already uploading. The shares were already multiplying. The story was already spreading across Lagos like fire in dry grass. And by morning, Chinidu Okonkwo, the son of one of Nigeria's most respected businessmen, would be the country's most talked about villain. The first video went viral at 1:23 a.m. Chinidu didn't know it yet. He was at home, in his room, scrolling through Instagram and replaying the night in his mind. In his version of events, he had been disrespected. Publicly embarrassed. That girl had been rude. Her friends had been aggressive. Security had overreacted. In his mind, he was the victim. By 2 a.m., the video had been shared 10,000 times. By 3 a.m., it was trending on Twitter Nigeria under multiple hashtags. Hashtag Chinidu Okonkwo, hashtag entitled Rich Kid, hashtag Touch Her. By 6 a.m., it had jumped platforms, WhatsApp groups, Instagram stories, Facebook timelines, even TikTok with commentary added over the footage. By 7 a.m., traditional media had picked it up. Blogs were writing headlines. Radio stations were discussing it on morning shows. Television news programs were preparing segments. The court of public opinion had convened, and the verdict was unanimous. Guilty. Chinedu woke up at 10 a.m. to 73 missed calls, 247 unread messages, and his Instagram comments flooded with words he had never had directed at him before. Entitled Brat. This is what's wrong with Nigeria. His parents failed. Rich people think they own everyone. He should be arrested for assault. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the notifications. This couldn't be happening. This was blown out of proportion. People didn't understand. They weren't there. He called his father. The phone rang 6 times before Adebayo answered. Come to the house. Now. His father's voice was ice. Don't talk to anyone. Don't post anything. Just come. The line went dead. Chinedu dressed quickly and drove to his parents' main house in VGC, his mind racing through explanations, justifications, ways to make his father understand that this wasn't his fault. He arrived to find his father in the study, standing at the window, back turned. Dad, listen, this whole thing is... I've watched the video, Adebayo said quietly, still not turning around. Multiple versions. From multiple angles. I've read the comments. I've received calls from 12 different people this morning, all asking me about my son's behavior. It's not what it looks like. That girl was. That girl said no. Now Adebayo turned, and Chinedu saw something in his father's face he had never seen before. Not anger. Something worse. Disappointment. She said no multiple times, politely, and you couldn't accept it. You grabbed her. You made threats. You invoked my name as if it were a weapon. I was just. You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed this family. And you embarrassed me. Ngozi entered the study then, her eyes red from crying. Chinedu, what were you thinking? Mom, I swear, it wasn't. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't lie to us. We watched the video. Everyone has watched the video. Your face is everywhere. People are calling you a predator. They're saying we raised you with no values. They're questioning everything we've built. Chinedu felt panic rising in his throat. Okay, I made a mistake. But we can fix this. Dad, you know people. You can make some calls. We can get the videos taken down. We can. No. Adebayo's voice was firm. What? I said no. I'm not making calls. I'm not using influence. I'm not fixing this for you. Chinedu stared at his father in disbelief. But, that's what you always... What I always did, Adebayo interrupted, was wrong. I protected you from consequences because I loved you. Because I wanted to give you advantages I didn't have. Because I convinced myself that was what good fathers do. He walked to his desk and sat down heavily. But I didn't raise a son. I raised a liability. Someone who thinks money and connections can replace character. Someone who treats people as obstacles or accessories. Someone who uses my name to threaten and intimidate. Dad, please. The answer is no. You will face this. You will deal with the consequences. And you will do it without my intervention. Chinedu looked at his mother, desperate. Mom. Ngozi wiped her eyes. Your father is right. We should have done this years ago. We failed you by protecting you from yourself. This is insane. You're going to let them destroy me over one mistake. One mistake. Adebayo's voice rose for the first time. Chinedu, this isn't one mistake. This is the culmination of hundreds of mistakes we've been covering up since you were a child. The cheating, the fights, the disrespect, the sense of entitlement. This video didn't create a problem. It exposed one. He stood again. You're going to leave this house. Today. You're going to find somewhere else to live. You're going to figure out how to support yourself without access to family money or family connections. Chinedu laughed, but it sounded hollow. You're joking. I've never been more serious. Where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to live? That's for you to figure out. You're 23 years old. It's time you learned how the world actually works for people who don't have everything handed to them. This is punishment, Chinedu said bitterly. No, Adebayo replied. This is parenting. 20 years too late, but better late than never. Ngozi stepped forward. We love you, Chinedu. That's why we're doing this. Not because we want to hurt you, but because we want to save you from becoming someone irredeemable. By throwing me out. By abandoning me when I need you most. By finally setting the boundaries we should have set when you were 7, Adebayo said. You have until the end of the day to collect your things and leave. Your credit cards will be cancelled. Your access to company funds will be revoked. Your position at Okonkwo Holdings is suspended indefinitely. Chinedu felt the room tilting. This couldn't be real. His parents didn't do this. They protected him. They fixed things. That was how it had always worked. You'll regret this, he said, his voice shaking. I already have regrets, Adebayo replied. But they're about what I failed to do, not what I'm doing now. The media coverage intensified throughout the day. Blog posts with headlines like Entitled Heir's Nightclub Meltdown and Rich Kid Syndrome, the Chinedu Okonkwo Case Study. Think pieces about privilege, accountability, and parenting. News segments interviewing behavioral psychologists about affluenza and entitlement culture. Social media debates about whether his behavior reflected individual character or systemic problems with how the wealthy raised their children. Some people called for his arrest. Others said the public shaming was punishment enough. A few, very few, tried to defend him, saying everyone deserved a second chance. But the majority opinion was clear. Chinedu Okonkwo represented everything wrong with privilege unchecked by responsibility. His friends stopped answering his calls. The guys who had been at his table that night? Suddenly busy. Suddenly distant. Suddenly claiming they didn't really know him that well. The women who used to compete for his attention? Silent. Their Instagram stories continued as normal, but his name never appeared in them anymore. The business connections he had cultivated through his father? Politely unavailable. In 48 hours, Chinedu went from being one of Lagos's most connected young men to being functionally invisible to the people who had once courted his friendship. He moved into a modest apartment in Yaba, not because he wanted to, but because it was what he could afford with the small amount of money he had in his personal account. The space was tiny compared to his room at his parents' house. No air conditioning, just fans. No generator, so when NEPA took light, he sat in darkness. No house help, so he had to cook his own meals or buy food from the street. For the first time in his life, Chinedu experienced what normal life felt like for millions of Nigerians. And he hated it. But the question everyone was asking, the question even he couldn't answer yet, was this. Was this abandonment? Was this revenge? Was this reputation management? Or was this something else entirely? The answer wouldn't become clear for months. Because this wasn't punishment. This was preparation for something Chinedu couldn't yet imagine. The first week was the hardest. Not because of the physical discomfort, though that was real enough. The heat in the apartment at night. The mosquitoes. The noise from the street that never seemed to stop. But because of the silence. Chinedu's phone, which used to vibrate constantly with messages and calls and invitations, now sat quiet for hours at a time. The only messages he received were from numbers he didn't recognize, journalists asking for interviews, strangers sending insults, opportunists trying to exploit his downfall. His social media, which he finally stopped checking after the third day, continued its merciless dissection of his character. Memes had been created. Parody accounts had launched. His name had become shorthand for entitled behavior. "Don't be a Chinidu," people were saying when someone acted privileged. He had become a cautionary tale. On day 8, his money ran out. The personal account he'd been drawing from, money from birthday gifts, small allowances he'd saved, or rather, forgotten to spend, hit zero. He had exactly 4,000 naira to his name. 4,000 naira. His watch cost 400 times that. He tried calling his mother. She answered on the 5th ring. "Mom, I need help. I'm out of money. I can't help you, Chinidu." Her voice was sad but firm. "Your father and I agreed. You have to figure this out yourself." "I'll starve." "No, you won't. You'll work. Like everyone else." "Work? Doing what? Who's going to hire me? My face is everywhere." "Then you'll have to find work that doesn't require your face. This is part of the process." "What process?" "Destroying me." "Teaching you," she replied. "I love you. But I can't help you right now." She hung up. Chinidu stared at his phone, rage and fear fighting for dominance in his chest. He spent the rest of that day walking around Yaba, looking for work. He tried a few restaurants. "Can I get an application?" The manager looked him up and down, designer clothes now slightly dirty from wear, expensive watch still on his wrist. "We're not hiring." He tried a betting shop, a provisions store, a dry cleaning business. Same answer everywhere. "We're not hiring." By the 4th day of searching, reality had begun to settle in. No one wanted to hire him because he was overqualified on paper but underqualified in reality. He had a degree but no real skills. He had work experience at his father's company, but everyone knew that job had been a facade. And even when people didn't recognize his face, they could sense something was off. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, the subtle markers of someone who had never actually worked for anything. On day 12, he sold his watch. He found a buyer on Instagram, a luxury goods reseller who drove a hard bargain because he knew Chinidu was desperate. The watch had cost 12 million naira. The buyer offered 2 million. Chinidu wanted to refuse, wanted to negotiate, wanted to maintain some dignity. But he had 800 naira left and no food in his apartment. He took the money. It felt like selling a piece of himself. That money bought him 6 more weeks. 6 weeks of learning to budget. Learning to cook rice without burning it. Learning to wash his own clothes. Learning to live without air conditioning. Learning to navigate public transportation because he'd sold his car too. Learning to be invisible. Because that's what happened when you had no money and no connections in Lagos. You became invisible. The compound where he lived, people barely acknowledged him. No more greetings of Oga. No more deference. Just indifference. He was nobody. And being nobody, after a lifetime of being somebody, was its own kind of torture. On week 7, something shifted. He was at a local restaurant, not the kind he used to frequent, but a small buka where a plate of rice and stew cost 300 naira, when he overheard a conversation. 2 men were talking about a logistics company that was hiring drivers. Cash payment at the end of each day. No paperwork required if you had your own vehicle. Chinidu's ears perked up. He had sold his Range Rover, but he still had enough money to rent a small commercial vehicle for deliveries. It wasn't what he had imagined himself doing. It was about as far from executive director at Okonkwo Holdings as you could get. But it was work. Real work. He approached the men. "Sorry to interrupt. This logistics company you mentioned, do you have a contact?" They looked at him with the suspicious eyes of people who had learned not to trust well-spoken strangers. Why you want to know? I need work, Chinidu said simply. One of the men pulled out his phone and showed Chinidu a number. Call this man. Tell him Biodun sent you. But I warn you, the work is not easy. You go carry heavy loads. You go drive far distances. And these customers, they can be difficult. I can handle it, Chinidu said. He wasn't sure if he believed himself. The work was harder than anything Chinidu had ever experienced. He started at 6 a.m. and finished when the last delivery was completed, sometimes 8 p.m., sometimes midnight. He drove all over Lagos, Ikeja, Surulere, Lekki, Aja, places he had only seen from the comfort of air-conditioned SUVs. He carried boxes up multiple flights of stairs in buildings with no elevators. He dealt with customers who complained about everything: the delivery time, the condition of packages, the price, things that had nothing to do with him but he absorbed anyway because he needed the day's pay. His hands, which had never held anything heavier than a champagne glass, developed calluses. His back ached. His legs cramped. But slowly, painfully, something began to change. On his third week of driving, he made a delivery to a house in Aja. The customer, an older woman, asked him to help her move some furniture inside. I'll pay you extra, she offered. The old Chinidu would have refused. Would have considered it beneath him. The new Chinidu said, okay. They moved the furniture. She paid him an additional 2,000 naira. As he was leaving, she said, thank you. You're very polite. Not like most of these delivery people who act like they're doing you a favor. It was a small thing. A tiny compliment. But it touched something in Chinidu he hadn't felt in a long time. He had been useful, helpful, appreciated for his actions, not his name. On week 9, he made a mistake. He delivered a package to the wrong address, an honest error, 2 houses with similar numbers on the same street. The customer was furious. Called the logistics company. Complained loudly. His supervisor called him. Chinidu, you made a mistake. This is the second time. One more and we'll have to let you go. The old Chinidu would have made excuses. Would have blamed someone else. Would have gotten angry and defensive. The new Chinidu said, I'm sorry. It was my fault. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't. That night, lying in his hot apartment with a fan barely moving the humid air, Chinidu thought about that phone call. He had apologized. Actually apologized. Not the fake apologies he used to give when his parents forced him to. Not the strategic apologies designed to avoid consequences. A real apology because he genuinely understood he had made a mistake that affected someone else. When had that changed? When had he started caring about doing things right rather than just avoiding blame? On week 11, he saw someone from his old life. He was making a delivery in Lekki when he saw Tund, one of his former friends, getting out of a Mercedes at a restaurant. Chinidu froze. His first instinct was to hide. To avoid being seen in his work clothes, sweaty and dirty from a day of deliveries. But Tund had already spotted him. Their eyes met. Chinidu waited for the mockery. The judgment. The pitying look. Instead, Tund walked over. Chinidu. Guy, how far? I'm good. I'm working. I can see. Tund gestured at the delivery van. How's it going? It's honest work, Chinidu said, and realized he meant it. Tund nodded slowly. Look man, what happened to you? The video and everything. It was harsh. But maybe you needed it. Chinidu didn't know how to respond. I don't know if you remember, Tund continued, but 2 years ago, at that party in Ikoyi, you embarrassed me in front of everyone. Made fun of my shoes because they weren't designer. I laughed it off, but that shit hurt, bro. Chinidu's throat tightened. I don't remember. But I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that and for everything. Tund looked at him for a long moment. You know what? I believe you. That's new. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Listen, Tund said, I'm not saying we're boys again or whatever. But I respect what you're doing. It takes guts to start over. Especially after what you went through. He handed Chinedu a card. My cousin runs a logistics company. Bigger operation than what you're doing now. If you want, I can put in a word. Better pay, better routes. Why would you help me? Chinedu asked. Because people deserve second chances, Tund said. And because I think you might actually be earning yours. He walked away, leaving Chinedu standing by his delivery van, holding the business card, feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. That night, Chinedu called his mother. She answered on the first ring. Chinedu. Mom. I just wanted to tell you. I get it now. I understand what you and Dad were trying to do. Oh, my son. She sounded like she was crying. How are you? I'm tired. I'm broke. My body hurts. But I'm okay. Actually okay, not just saying it. Tell me. And he did. He told her about the work. About the mistakes and the learning. About the apology that felt real. About running into Tund. I was terrible, Mom. To so many people. And I didn't even realize it because I thought the world existed to accommodate me. And now, she asked gently, now I'm learning it doesn't. And maybe that's better. They talked for an hour. The longest real conversation they'd had in years. When they hung up, Chinedu sat in his small apartment, surrounded by nothing expensive, nothing impressive, nothing that signaled status or wealth. Just himself. And for the first time since the night at Quillock's, he felt something like peace. Because respect cannot be demanded. It can only be earned. And he was finally starting to earn it. 3 months after being sent away, Chinedu received a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers usually meant journalists or trolls, but something made him pick up. Hello. Chinedu, it's your father. The voice stopped him cold. They hadn't spoken since that day in the study. Dad. I'd like you to come to the house. Tomorrow afternoon. If you're willing. Are you? Just come. Please. The line went dead. Chinedu took the bus to VGC, something that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. He walked the last kilometer to his parents' house because the bus didn't go all the way into the estate. Security recognized him, same guards who had escorted him out months earlier. But their greeting was different now. Respectful, but not deferential. The way you greet someone you acknowledge, not someone you fear. Welcome, sir. His mother met him at the door. She hugged him tightly, and he felt her shaking. My son. Look at you. He had lost weight. His clothes were cheap but clean. His hands were rough from work. His face had lost the softness that comes from comfortable living. I look different. You look grown, she said. His father was in the study, same place as before. But this time when Chinedu entered, Adebayo stood and extended his hand. They shook. Man to man. Sit, his father said. Chinedu sat. Your mother and I have been following your progress. Not directly. We made a commitment not to interfere. But we have sources. People who report back without your knowledge. Chinedu should have felt invaded. Instead, he felt curious. What did they tell you? That you're working as a delivery driver. That you've kept the job for 3 months without incident. That your supervisor says you're reliable and polite. That you've helped customers beyond your job requirements. That you apologized for mistakes instead of making excuses. His father paused. That you're different. I am, Chinedu said simply. Tell me how. And Chinidu did. He told them about the first week, about the fear and anger, about selling his watch and his car, about learning to live on a budget, about the physical exhaustion of real work. He told them about the mistakes he made and how he handled them, about the customers who treated him poorly and how he responded with patience instead of rage, about running into Tund and receiving kindness he didn't deserve but desperately needed. I was a terrible person, he said finally. I knew it, in some abstract way. But I didn't feel it, didn't understand it, because I never faced consequences. Every mistake I made, you fixed it. Every person I hurt, you compensated them. Every boundary I crossed, you redrew the line further out. We did, his father admitted. We're guilty of that. But you stopped, and it saved me. Ngozi wiped her eyes. That night at Quillock's, Chinidu continued, I thought I was the victim. I was furious that girl rejected me. Furious that security removed me. Furious that people filmed it. But I wasn't furious at myself for grabbing her arm, for threatening people, for using your name as a weapon. And now? Adebayo asked. Now I'm ashamed. Genuinely ashamed. Not because I got caught, but because I did it at all. Because that was who I was. Someone who thought he could take what he wanted just because he wanted it. The study was quiet for a long moment. There's something you should know, his father said finally. The day after we sent you away, I called an emergency board meeting at Okonkwo Holdings. I announced that you were no longer associated with the company. That your previous position had been honorary. That effective immediately, my succession plans would be re-evaluated based on merit, not bloodline. Chinidu absorbed this. You removed me from your will? No. But I restructured it. Your inheritance is now in a trust that you can only access after demonstrating sustained personal and professional growth. Employment history. References. Evidence of character. It should have hurt. Should have felt like rejection. Instead, it felt like respect. That's fair, Chinidu said. His parents exchanged a glance. We have a proposal, Ngozi said. Not a bailout. A opportunity. I'm listening. Your father has a friend who runs a logistics and supply chain company, she explained. He's expanding operations and needs someone to manage a new division. It's real work. Long hours. Difficult clients. You'd start at the bottom of management, not the top. The pay is modest. There's no special treatment because of your name. In fact, your name might work against you given your reputation. Why would he hire me? Chinidu asked. Because I showed him your work records from the past 3 months, Adebayo said. I showed him the reference your current supervisor wrote. I told him about the change we've witnessed. And I promised him that if you screw up, I won't interfere. You'll face the consequences like anyone else. Chinidu felt something heavy and light at the same time. You're offering me a job. We're offering you a chance, his father corrected. What you do with it is entirely up to you. And if I fail, then you fail. And you'll figure out what comes next, just like you did these past 3 months. Chinidu thought about his small apartment in Yaba, about the delivery van he drove, about the calluses on his hands and the ache in his back. He thought about the peace he'd found in honest work, in real apologies, in treating people with respect because they deserved it, not because they could do something for him. I'll take it, he said. But I want to keep doing deliveries for another month. Finish out properly. Give proper notice. His parents looked surprised. You don't have to do that, Ngozi said. You could start the new position immediately. I know. But I made a commitment. My supervisor is counting on me. It would be wrong to just leave without proper transition. Adebayo smiled. Actually smiled. That's exactly the right answer. 1 month later, Chinedu started his new position. It was hard. Harder than delivery driving in some ways, easier in others. He worked 12-hour days. He dealt with demanding clients and frustrated suppliers. He made mistakes and owned them. He succeeded sometimes and celebrated quietly. His colleagues were skeptical at first. They knew who he was, knew his history. But slowly, through consistent behavior and genuine humility, he earned their respect. Not because of his name, because of his character. 6 months into the job, his supervisor called him into the office. "Chinedu, we need to talk." His heart sank. Was he being fired? "You've been doing good work. Really good work. The clients like you. Your team respects you. You handle problems without drama. Thank you, sir. We want to promote you. Division manager. It comes with a raise and more responsibility." Chinedu felt pride swell in his chest. Actual pride, earned through effort. "I'd be honored." "There's one condition," his supervisor said. "We need you to do a media interview. Just one. Local business magazine. They want to do a story about second chances and corporate culture. Your name would help." The old Chinedu would have refused. Would have been afraid of judgment, of stirring up old memories. The new Chinedu said, "I'll do it. But only if I can tell the truth. All of it. That's what they want." The interview published 3 weeks later. The headline, "From Disgrace to Growth, Chinedu Okonkwo's Journey Back." In it, he was honest about everything. The entitlement. The incident. The shame. The struggle. The learning. The change. He didn't make excuses. Didn't blame anyone. Just told the truth. The response was mixed. Some people said it was a PR move. Others said he didn't deserve redemption. A few said everyone makes mistakes. But buried in the comments, among the criticism and skepticism, were messages that mattered. This inspired me to be better. Everyone deserves a second chance if they're willing to earn it. This is what accountability looks like. Chinedu read them all, the good and the bad, and he accepted both. Because that was the final lesson. You can't control how people perceive you. You can only control who you actually are. And who he was now, someone who worked hard, treated people with respect, and owned his mistakes, was someone he could finally be proud of. 1 year after the night at Quillock's, Chinedu received an invitation. His father was being honored by the Lagos Business Council for his contributions to economic development. Black tie event. 500 guests. Media coverage. The kind of event the old Chinedu would have attended automatically, entitled to his place by birth. The kind of event the new Chinedu wasn't sure he belonged at. He called his mother. "Did you see the invitation?" "Yes." "Should I come?" "That's your decision, Chinedu. Your father and I would love to have you there, but only if you feel comfortable." "What if people recognize me? What if they bring up?" "Then you'll handle it with the grace and maturity you've developed," she said gently. "Or you'll stay home, and there's no shame in that either. This is your choice." He thought about it for 3 days. Then he RSVP'd yes. The event was at the Eco Hotel. Chandeliers and champagne and people in expensive attire networking with practiced ease. Chinedu arrived alone, wearing a suit he'd bought with his own money. Not designer. Not cheap. Just appropriate. He saw familiar faces, people who used to know him, used to fear him, used to enable him. Their reactions varied. Some looked away. Some nodded politely. A few approached with cautious warmth. "Chinedu, good to see you. Heard you're doing well. Your father speaks highly of your work." He handled each interaction with quiet grace. No bravado. No defensiveness. Just honest conversation. Then he saw Amara. She was there with colleagues from Deloitte, laughing at something someone said, looking exactly as confident as she had that night at Quillock's. Their eyes met across the room. Chinidu's first instinct was to look away, to avoid the confrontation, to pretend he hadn't seen her. Instead, he walked over. Her colleagues noticed him approaching and their body language shifted, protective, wary. "Amara," he said, "I don't expect you to talk to me, but I need to say something. I'm sorry. For that night. For grabbing you. For the threats. For everything. You had every right to reject me, and I had no right to respond the way I did. I'm deeply ashamed of my behavior." The space around them had gone quiet. Amara studied him for a long moment. "I've seen the interview you did. The article. Yeah. Was it honest? Or was it PR? It was honest," Chinidu said. "I can't undo what I did. I can't take back that night. All I can do is be different going forward. Better. That's what I'm trying to do." She nodded slowly. "Apology accepted. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just keep being better." She turned back to her colleagues, and the conversation resumed. Chinidu walked away, his heart pounding, but his conscience clear. Later that night, after his father had received his award and made his acceptance speech, Adebayo found Chinidu at one of the back tables. "Not sitting with the family?" his father asked. "Didn't want to create a distraction. This is your night." Adebayo sat down. "It's our night. Yours and mine. We both had to learn difficult lessons this year. You didn't do anything wrong. I enabled you for 23 years. That was wrong. But I'm proud of what you've become despite my mistakes." "Because of them," Chinidu corrected. "If you hadn't cut me off, I'd still be the same person. Worse, probably." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the party continue around them. "So what's next?" Adebayo asked. "Keep working. Keep learning. Maybe one day earn my way back into Okonkwo Holdings. If you'll have me." "You'd want that? After everything? Not to take over. Not to be handed a position. But to contribute. To be part of something larger than myself. On merit." Adebayo smiled. "Then we'll see. In time. When you're ready. Not when I decide you're ready, but when you actually are." "That's fair." His mother joined them, sliding into the seat next to Chinidu. "My boys," she said, taking both their hands. "I'm proud of you both. It took courage to do what you did," she said to Adebayo. "And it took even more courage to change," she said to Chinidu. "I had good teachers," Chinidu replied. "Eventually." They laughed, soft, genuine laughter that held no bitterness, no regret. Just acceptance of the journey they'd all been on. The next morning, Chinidu woke up in his apartment in Yaba. Still modest. Still hot. Still a long way from where he'd grown up. But it was his. Earned through his own work. Maintained by his own effort. He got ready for work, ironed his shirt, made his breakfast, caught the bus. At the office, his team greeted him with easy camaraderie. Not because he was the boss's son. Not because they feared him. But because he'd proven himself reliable, fair, and humble. One of his colleagues, Funmi, a woman who'd been initially skeptical of him, stopped by his desk. "Hey, Chinidu. I saw your dad's award ceremony in the news. That's big." "Yeah, he's worked hard for it." "The article mentioned you were there." "That must have been intense." "It was. But it was good. Necessary." Funmi nodded. "You know what? When you first started here, I didn't think you'd last a month. Thought you were just here for show. What changed your mind? You did. You show up every day. You do the work. You don't act like you're above anything. That's rare. Thank you. That means a lot. Just saying what's true. She walked back to her desk. Chinedu sat for a moment, letting that settle in.